Hey, it's James here from GoodGuitarist.com, and in today's lesson, I have 5 tips for you that are going to improve your strumming sound and help you lock into the beat of the song so that your strumming feels automatic and natural. And real quick before we get started, if you want a guide through all the foundational skills like chords, strumming, chord progressions, learning songs, I have a free ebook. It's free for all my subscribers. I'll put a link to it in the corner and down below so that you can grab your copy today. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy learning guitar with me. Now, my first tip, and this is a really simple one, is to mute the strings with your chord hand as you practice strumming. So many times I'll hear from beginner students that their fingers are really sore from their practice session, and it's because they're holding down the same chord shape as they work on strumming. And I'm going to be honest here, if you're just holding a chord shape without actually moving it to other chord shapes, you're not practicing chords. It's just an exercise of how much pain your fingertips can endure. So why, hold them down? If you're practicing strumming, you don't need to worry about that. And even as an experienced guitar player, sometimes I'll play a gig for like 3 hours, and the hardest songs are not the ones with a lot of bar chords. They're the ones where you're just playing the same 2 chords back and forth because it keeps pressing the strings into the same spots on your fingers, and it's literally painful. So mute the strings by lightly touching them. Not only is it going to save your chord hand, it also gives you a nice sharp attack. I want to do a visual demonstration. This is the audio file for this lesson. That's what it looks like on a computer. And when I strum chords, it's kind of blobby and wavy. But when I'm doing the same pattern on muted strings, you see these sharp little hits. The sound is shorter, it's more precise, and you can hear it more accurately to ensure that your strumming is lining up right on the beat. So not only does it save your chord hand, but it also helps you tighten up your rhythm and be more precise when you're practicing, so you can hear exactly how close you are to the beat. Now, my second tip is to acknowledge that there's more to the strumming motion than just keeping a loose wrist. I'm sure you've heard that from a million different teachers out there, that you gotta have a loose wrist, but that is a gross oversimplification. We need to acknowledge the rotation of our forearm, the movement of our elbow, as well as our shoulder, and even our fingers and thumb and the way that they hold the pick. There's an entire system to it, and the most overlooked component is the rotation of your forearm. When people say loose wrist, what they actually mean is your forearm going like this. That's a far more important mechanic of how your arm works when it comes to playing guitar smooth and steady. The loose wrist comes from this. Your forearm is doing the work, That's the thing that's waving your loose wrist around. So I want you to just hold your arm in the strumming position, rotate your forearm, and just kind of let it fling your hand around and see what it feels like when your forearm is putting in the motion, And then when you add your elbow as you go down and up, your forearm flicks out, and as you come up, it rotates the other way. That is the true strumming motion. And I think so many people get messed up on the mechanics of strumming because they've heard that BS about having a loose wrist. And it's true, you gotta have a loose wrist, but that's like 5% of it, And another experiment you can do is just to move any one part of your arm, like only your wrist. You're gonna look like a robot, right? It's a combination of everything. Your thumb and fingers are making little micro adjustments to make sure that your pick is at the right angle. Your wrist is making slightly bigger adjustments so that your pick is hitting the strings at the right angle. Your forearm keeps your wrist loose. It takes the load off of it, it takes the strain off of it, and it provides you with that flicking motion. Your elbow propels your arm down and up so that it goes fast enough to sound good. And then your shoulder and back are supporting it all, making sure that your muscles don't get all cinched forward and you turn into like a punchback, right? So that's my second tip, to just be aware of the entire system. My next tip has to do with how hard you hold the pick. The more you squeeze it, the more abrasive it's gonna sound. If it's loose, hear the difference? Tight, loose. I'm not changing anything else. I'm literally just gripping my pick tight, and it makes me sound horrible. And when people are first getting started, they tend to over squeeze the pick. Maybe because they're worried that it's gonna fly out of their hands, or because they're just not aware of how much pressure it takes to actually hold onto the thing. And you know what? That's fine. You gotta start somewhere. But the sooner you become okay with holding it loose and maybe dropping a pick You know, just buy a few picks, have them on the table. When you drop one, just pick up another one. There's nothing wrong with dropping picks. When you watch a concert, the guitar player has like 6 guitar picks taped with double-sided tape to their microphone stand. You know, they're a professional. They're dropping picks all the time. They throw them at the crowd because they have a loose grip, just enough to hold the pick. You know, with a loose grip, you're going to get a smoother sound. And a good way to work this out, I want you to imagine that your pick is like a paintbrush and you're just brushing the strings. We can just mute the strings. We can just brush them. And you're changing the angle a little bit. You know, on the way down, you brush them like that, just like with a paintbrush. And on the way up, you brush them like that. That forearm rotation thing really comes in handy here, right? You know, when you go slow, it's hard to be loose, right? You kind of, it's one of those counterintuitive things. You got to go a little bit quicker to really get loose. And then you go looser and looser until you drop it. And you'll be like, okay, that's too much. But notice how loose it got before it actually flew out of your fingers, right? That's the point where you want to be in terms of how to hold your pick. And by the way, bonus tip, that thing that I was just doing there, that's an excellent exercise on its own. You know, a lot of people just want to jump into strumming patterns right away. They never take time to do the repetitive motions like that. You know, it's not really a strumming pattern, but it's going to perfect the mechanics, which will in turn make strumming and rhythm so much easier. Now, my next tip is to utilize continuous arm motion. I've seen so many guitar lessons. Honestly, they're kind of weird, to me at least, because they just write D-U, D-D-U, D-U, D on the screen, and they expect that to mean something. And yes, I talk about downstrokes and upstrokes in my lessons, but if you watch any of my lessons back to the very start of the channel, there's over like 600 lessons at this point. I've always lined up the downstrokes and the upstrokes with the counting. And this isn't just because I want you to count, but it's because it all ties into this fundamental idea that your arm is always moving down and up like a machine, even when you're not hitting the strings. Even if I'm playing a pattern like this, my arm is always going down and up in order to keep me locked into the beat and the feeling of the song. Because if I only move my arm when I need to make a stroke, you know, instead of feeling a steady rhythm that's just humming along, it's like, you know, it just doesn't have that smoothness. And it's going to be impossible to keep a steady rhythm and to make the song feel good. So I want you to watch a video of a pro. I recently watched a lot of Peter Frampton live where he plays acoustic. And if you focus on his elbow and just take a look at how his arm's always moving down and up the entire time, you know, that's what I would call continuous arm motion. And if you're not doing this, it is something you must learn. There are no exceptions for this. Your arm goes down on the numbers, up on the ands, even when you're not making contact with the guitar strings. Now, my final tip, I see this a lot in beginners. They don't put enough velocity behind their strumming. So instead of getting a nice cohesive sound, it sounds kind of spread out like this. And ultimately, you want to go through the strings fast enough without raising the volume. And this ties into everything we talked about. You know, if you hold your pick too hard and you go too fast, you know, it's like, it's crazy, right? It's startling. You want to have that loose grip on your pick, your wrist to be loose because your forearm is waving it around and taking the strain off of it. The whole support system's in place. You want to be making that continuous arm motions that you're not stressing out about when to do downstrokes and upstrokes. You know, and it's tying it all together. You get all that stuff, and it'll allow you to get your velocity high enough to go through the strings quickly on the downstroke and on the upstroke, so that all the strings ring together and make a nice, tight, cohesive chord. And the way that I like to do this with students who are having trouble with this, we'll play downstrokes only. And we'll play it on the numbers and the ands. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And we start with smaller motions and we try to make bigger motions. And you don't have to go too fast. You know, I don't want you to stress out and tense up here. A good idea is to get a metronome and find a slow pace that's 100% comfortable. I just have my metronome right here. You know, here I set it to 50 beats per minute. And then we just go 1 and 2 and 3. And we try to get the motions bigger and bigger. If you can't cover the face of the guitar with that, Maybe you should slow down your metronome. And once you find the point where that's comfortable, that's good. You could stop there, or we could go a little bit further. We could play 4 downstrokes on the beat like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. This helps you kind of loosen up a little bit, you know, going like half the speed and then doubling it up. And then you could replace the pure downstrokes with down ups, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And you just do that over and over again. And by working on it this way, you know, one thing at a time, you're going to be able to practice strumming from a bunch of different perspectives or angles, you know, and when you go to practice strumming patterns, all the mechanics are just going to be automatic. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. If you enjoy learning guitar with me, please don't forget to subscribe and like, hit the bell icon and all that stuff. It really does help. And if you want to take this a little bit further, I want to invite you to try my premium courses. They are complete start to finish paths that'll take you from where you're at to where you want to be on guitar. If you're still working on getting all the chords together and becoming a confident strummer, Learn Guitar Once and For All will get you there. There's over 100 lessons, and they're all laid out in a step-by-step format. All the practicing is laid out for you. You practice along with me. You know, I don't just want to show you something and then leave you to figure it out. I walk you through literally every single motion, every single step, so that you can play the songs that you want to play. And if you're a little bit beyond that, you know, if you're pretty good with the chord shapes, but you want to take your strumming to the next level, my course, Strumming Made Simple, will make that happen. It's all about going beyond basic strumming, learning to play and sing at the same time, learning to add cool things like muted strokes to your strumming, to strum 16th notes, and a whole bunch of that late beginner, intermediate, or even some advanced strumming concepts. I'm going to put a link to both of those down below if you're interested. Otherwise, please let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below. Have a fun time practicing, and I'll see you next time.